Welcome to the Evalesco Healthy, Wealthy and Happy podcast. The information provided on and made available through this video and podcast does not constitute as financial product advice. The information is of a general nature only and does not take into account your individual objectives, financial situation or needs. It should not be used, relied upon or treated as a substitute for specific professional advice. We recommend that you obtain your own independent professional advice before making any decisions in relation to your particular requirements or circumstances.
Welcome to the Evalesco Healthy, Wealthy and Happy podcast. My name's Jeff, I'm your host today, and I'm joined by Evalesco Associate Jenny Porter. Thanks for coming along, Jen.
Thank you for having me.
Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the paperwork that goes into the financial advice process. But before we get into that, as you all know, this is a healthy, wealthy and happy podcast. So tell us a little bit about what you do, Jenny, to be healthy and happy.
Well, I usually take daily walks and I go to Pilates. That's about it. Yep.
Okay. Pilates, is that for relaxation or strength or movement?
Bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bit of core strength, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Do you use the machines? Or?
Yeah, it's the reformer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been there once and it looked a bit scary, some of those machines. But
It takes a little bit to get used to with coordination. Also depends how scary your teacher is.
yeah.
Mine are all pretty scary.
Are
Yeah.
they?
Yeah.
Cracking the whip?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, it's good. It's good fun.
Good stuff. So coming back to the work side of things for us and I guess the wealthy side of things, talk to us a little bit about some of the paperwork that we need to go through with clients at the start of the process when we first start working with clients.
Yep, so there's two big documents that we essentially have to have. One is the risk profile, and then the second one is the client data file. So you kind of hear it as either a fact find or CDF, so that's kind of what those mean. Risk profile is essentially a questionnaire that we ask our clients to complete so that we can invest them in line with their risk appetite. That's essentially what it comes down to. So I think it's about 8 questions, and then you go through that and you just have to answer, I guess, in line with what you're feeling. And then there are also investment preferences. So we get an idea if you want to be fully ethical or you just might not really care or you only care a little bit. And that's our guideline. We base our advice off of that. We can't really form any advice without that document.
Yeah.
It's a must.
Yeah, I think it's it's an interesting questionnaire. It's not a test, is it? Some people look at it and say there's a right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong answers.
No, there isn't.
And it's a lot about previous experience with investing.
Yep.
Sometimes that means we have to work with clients to give them a bit of education as to what goes into it if it's their first time with these types of questions. But it's a really good gauge for us to get a bit of a background on where people are approaching things from.
Yep.
And as you said, how they might feel about risk and how we can then allocate their portfolio. We use it, I think, more, it's an important document, but it's not the be all and end all, is it?
No, I mean, I think I've seen quite a few come back with the clients are a bit more defensive, especially with younger accumulators, and obviously they need to grow as much as possible. So you'll often have discussions with advisors where they'll vary it, and that also comes with the discussion with the client as well, and just making them feel comfortable and understanding that you probably have to take a bit of a higher risk. You're young, and so they have time on their side, whereas if they're older clients in pension, that's a completely different strategy, and so they might be more defensive for a reason. It's because they need this money to continue living, and they aren't generating income anymore. So there's a big difference between the two. So it really depends on where clients are in their life.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And then the other one, the fact find.
Yes, the client fact find. That guy. That's a big boy. So that's what we ask clients to complete, just for a general overview of your entire situation. So that's income, expenses, assets, and liabilities. It's fully a working document. I think a lot of clients get a bit in their head too much. So especially if it gets mailed out and they see all these numbers, I mean, it's a static document. So basically as soon as you hit generate, it's going to be inaccurate with numbers because market movement and everything like that. So it's best not to get too heavily focused on that. It's just capturing your life to reflect it as most accurately as possible. And we really, especially if you need cash flow advice or you're going to be doing an investment contribution plan, we really need to know what your income and your expenses are like so that you can sustain that, because we don't want you in some kind of contribution plan where it's eating into your enjoyment of life and you actually can't afford it. That would be the antithesis of what we're supposed to be doing. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so it's just it's a bit boring, but it's just something that we need to do because we have our due diligence. We need to show that we're getting to know you and that we're taking into consideration your concerns and what your lifestyle is actually like. So it's best to just be honest about your expenses because we ask you to complete a budget like in tandem with that as well. It's just best to be honest. We don't care how much you spend as long as it's in line with what you can sustain. Obviously, if there's massive red flags, that's something for the advisor to address, but it's best to just be honest. If you like, I don't know, spending $200 a week on nails and you can afford it, put it in there. You deserve it. It's your money.
Yeah.
So and I think that's what's most important. It's like, it's your money. You get to spend it in the way you want to. You work hard for it. So you want people to give you the best advice possible.
And that's very much about the broader piece of the client data form. Is it's about what's the scope of the advice and what are your goals. And so it's not for us to set that either, is it? We want to understand what's important to you, and then this information just helps to support the advice we're giving you, so that you can move towards your goals and objectives. And we do, we're trying to. There's no such thing as a paperless office, but we are trying to cut down the paperwork. So a lot of this is available now digitally, or you can
it's all
DocuSign and writable PDFs and that sort of thing. We also do collect a lot of the information from various sources and collate that for you as well. So it's not like somebody has to sit down and handwrite in a client data form these days, not like in the old days.
Yeah, there's a fair few discussions and meetings that happen even before that, and typically when we send something like that out to you, the scope and the goals and objectives are already on there. But again, it's a fluid document, so the client might read that and be like, no, that's not really the case, and then we would just amend it from there. It's fully, workable.
I think in some cases for people, this is a really valuable first step in the advice process. It's not often that you pull together all this information into one source, and some people know, I've got a bit going on here and a bit going on there. So it can be valuable just from that part. It is a bit of a process, it is a little bit of work. Sometimes turns people off at the start of the process, but we do try to make it as easy as possible. And then if you can get some value out of having that put together, it's a good place to start. Yeah,
I mean, it's finance, there's lots of red tape, lots of compliance. There's no fighting against it, you just kind of have to grin and bear it. It's heavy lifting in the first instance, and then you're done. And then it only has to be really reviewed about every 3 years. Or if there's like a massive change where you've, been made redundant, or you come into inheritance, or, a life event of some kind, where you get a diagnosis that affects your health significantly. It's things like that if we have to, issue another statement of advice document, that will come in line with a new client fact line, because what was 3 or 4 years ago definitely isn't what is current, especially if you have a diagnosis or something like that.
I think the final piece of the puzzle is that the protection that it puts in place is really that we all agree it's in writing, we're on the same page, and we know what we're working with, so there's no
it's a nice solid starting point for the client. It gives them security, because we've had these discussions and a lot, I think, can get missed. It's hard to retain, especially with so much lingo back and forth, and people just find themselves, I think, generally overwhelmed with that and don't really understand what's going on. So it's nice to have, this is the starting place, this is what we're building everything on. It's a good way to look at it.
Fantastic. So that's the starting point of the process, and good place to wrap up for today's video. Thanks for explaining that to us, Jenny. If you come on board as a client, you'll get to experience your own client data form and risk profiling process. So, come and test it out for yourself. In the meantime, have a healthy, wealthy, and happy day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Evalesco Healthy, Wealthy and Happy podcast. If you would like to learn more about anything you've heard in this episode, please give us a call on 02 9232 6800 or email admin@evalesco.com.au. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more Evalesco podcast episodes, and stay up to date by following us on Instagram and Facebook.